Hello, everybody!
Turn this up in my headphones, Charles.
Turning it up. Hello, everybody, one and all. Welcome to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. My name is Charles, and with me today, as always, is my lifelong friend and co-host, Dylan.
I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend, Charles.
I am ready to talk some fantasy with my friend as well, Dylan, and not just any fantasy today, because today we get to dust off one of our most favorite series, one of our most favorite authors. It's always fun when we get to talk about Brandon Sanderson, and more specifically, Mistborn, the original trilogy of Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson.
Yep. Always a blast. You and I have a lot of history with Mistborn as a series. It was the first book we buddy read for Friends Talking Fantasy, and we'd both read it before and had many conversations about this one, and we're continuing the conversation today with a Who Would Win Mistborn style episode here, and we've moved these Who Would Win formats to being focused on particular books, which allows us to, or series, which allows us to get into them in depth with full on potential spoilers for those series in particular. So today that means that if you haven't yet read Mistborn Era 1, that's the first 3 books in Mistborn, then, and you don't want to have that spoiled for you, then now is a good time to turn this down in your headphones. And if you want to check that series out, I mean, you probably don't need to hear it from us, but we'll tell you anyway. Mistborn's awesome. We love it. And we highly recommend checking that out if you haven't gotten the chance yet. But with that out of the way, Charles, do you want to explain the Who Would Win format to anyone who's tuning into this kind of episode for the first time?
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you're a first-time Who Would Win listener and you've read Mistborn and you're a fan, welcome. This is the perfect place to be. We're super excited to have you, and here's how it's going to work. We have almost all of the main Mistborn characters that we could think of in a list, and we have plugged them into our Who Would Win fantasy scenario generator. And we have also put in a whole bunch of different kind of matchups. And I'm not just talking like who would win in a fight. I'm talking who would win in a election, a cook-off, a debate. And there's all kinds of fun fighting competitions as well that we will get into. So Dylan will generate a competition. I will generate the Mistborn characters that will enter in that competition. And then we will speculate who will win.
Yes, and none of this has been prepared beforehand. It's just you and me, Charles, whatever improvisation skills we do or do not possess.
That's right. It's all in the generator's hands now, and we'll see if we can get some interesting matchups here.
We always hope for interesting matchups, and we usually get at least a few. So let's, with no further ado, shall we get the generator pumping here?
Let's get the generator pumping. What contest do we have?
All right. Beep, boop, beep. It's cards, it just says.
All right.
I guess we put cards, and that, not poker, just cards. But anyway, it's pick 3. Let's assume it's like Texas Hold'em or something, right?
Yeah, sure.
Pick
something
3.
That requires a bit of skill and being able to read other people and things like that. So let's.
You don't want to hear about Spook versus Human the Colossus playing Go Fish, Charles? Riveting content.
That would be riveting content. But instead, we've got 3 pretty heavy hitters right out of the gate here playing cards. The first is, there's no other way to introduce him. It's the Lord Ruler himself.
Wow.
Then we have Master Philosopher and one of our favorite characters in all of fantasy, Ham. Big Ham fans.
I thought, for some reason, you were going to say Sazed when you said Master Philosopher. And I was like, yes, definitely one of my favorites. So happy Sazed's involved. And then you're like, Ham.
No,
Like,
this is a deep
I know you
cut
love
for
Ham.
Friends Talking Fantasies that we love Ham. So bringing Ham
You do.
back.
Ham's fine. I think Ham's fine. I just don't have the same strong positive reaction you do to him. I think I have a reaction in line with most people who read Mistborn. It's like, Ham seems nice.
Well, Dylan, what's your reaction to Marsh? Because he is the third. Ooh. He is the third card player in this Vegas-style, high-stakes card match.
Yes, he. Well, as a fellow, my last name is Marsh. Mm. As a fellow Marsh myself, I am definitely positively predisposed toward Marsh. So that's about it. Share a name. No, I mean, I guess, rebel leader in his past, seems like a nice guy. Mm-hmm. Obviously, things went a little bit... I'm glad we can do spoilers now. Yes. Obviously, things went a little bit awry for him when he started getting, his eyes impaled with metal and things like that. But all that being said, Marsh, good guy, and he does get a lot of redemption for the times where he's gone awry for good reason. So actually, I really like Marsh as a character, and what can you say but shares that Marsh name. So
not much more needs to be said, but we do have to speculate who would win. And honestly, I don't think anyone can beat the Lord Ruler because he is both. He both has the power of allomancy and the power of Furakemi. So he could generally. He could push and pull on people's emotions. And, he could either be a rioter or a soother, whether he's, using zinc or brass. Mm-hmm. And he can further enhance those abilities with his Furakemi abilities. So you gotta give it to him unless there is some kind of canon where either Ham or Marsh is just insanely good at cards, and there isn't.
Yeah, I don't really see any way that they could compete with the Lord Ruler. The Lord Ruler has shown himself to be a master strategist in a lot of ways, where even if he didn't have the magical abilities that you just mentioned, Charles, I think he clearly outplayed Marsh when Marsh was the rebel leader. And I think that it's just no contest. I don't know if you want to defend Ham over here, but I don't think he'd be particularly great at cards. I think he'd have trouble making decisions and being decisive and us kind of stuff. So I think it's a mismatch, and you got to go with the Lord Ruler. It's a mismatch.
I mean, I would have wanted to have seen Ham in like a fist fight or a duel with weapons or a debate.
A debate would be fun.
Those three things would have been fun, but cards against the Lord Ruler, not so much. So Lord Ruler in the landslide. Let's go ahead and get another contest going.
All right. Well, that means I got to get that generator pumping.
That's
beep,
right.
Boop, beep. It is a fist fight, Charles. So let's see.
Okay.
Ham's not in the mix anymore.
So now we're going to pick two people to duke it out with fisticuffs here. And this is an interesting matchup because neither of these two are known for their physical strength, really.
Interesting.
The first is the right-hand man to Kelsier, and this is the man without whom none of this series would have been possible. And, Kelsier's out there being like, we'll amass a huge army, we'll march and fight the Lord Ruler, and this is the guy balancing the ledgers, recruiting the men, heavy on the tactics, and we thank him so much for his service, and that is Doxin.
Charles, that is... You've received a lot of Doxin comparisons
from you,
from me, and others, presumably.
No, it's you.
Well, I could probably make Doxin comparisons happen from other people if need be. So I think that's just as important. So, Charles, as you've been called the Doxin of our podcast, let's be real here.
By you, but I like to think of myself as the Kelsier Doxin hybrid of the podcast. I've got the big picture, charm, and charisma, and then I've also got the ability to go out there and get it done. The complete package.
I think you're the complete package too, Charles. Don't let people tell you that you're just a Doxin. So, not even me. So, especially not me, Charles.
I'll try.
So, I'm sure that you are inclined toward picking Dachshund no matter what, but we'd still have to hear who this other character is in the mix.
That's true. This other character is most known for his political prowess, not so much his physical abilities, and that is Lord Ashwater Chet. Lord Ashwater Chet, as we know, is he's in a noble house, right? And later on in the series, he is maneuvering between the two ventures, between Straff and Elend, and through that, he is able to kind of put himself in a pretty powerful position. So we admire Chet for his political maneuvering, but that doesn't help you one bit in a fist fight.
Yeah, neither does Dachshund's logistical planning skills.
But
really.
Dachshund does have battle experience. I mean, granted, R.I.P. He didn't make it, and we can say that in the spoiler version. But he did fight the good fights, and so he does have that bit of an edge to him, I'll say.
I think, just the sheer canon that Dachshund has ever tried to fight, and we don't see any of that from Chet, means I'll give it to Dachshund. I don't think it.
Yeah, I think it's decidedly Dachshund, and we've done it, guys. That's another Who Would Win Mistborn in the books. Shall we generate another contest?
We shall. All right. Beep boop beep. It is a debate, Charles. This is one I'm excited to see how this one plays out.
All right. Well, this is a character that you may not have expected to appear in more of a verbal matchup. You would normally find her flying around, fighting Koloss, taking on the Lord Ruler, just generally saving all of existence. And as you do. And that would be Vin herself. We got her, guys. The main character of Mistborn has finally made her appearance. And against her, we have a character that, if you were to list all the characters in Mistborn, you'd have to kind of remember this one. I'll be honest here. This is a character who is in the Kelsier crew, part of Team Vin, but not as much page time as some of the other characters, and that is Clubs. So we have Vin and we have Clubs, and Vin is a hard person to defeat in just about anything.
Right.
And this is a debate, right? That's the contest that we're doing.
Yeah.
How could Vin not win?
Yeah. I kind of feel that too. I think Clubs has a lot of wisdom to offer, and he shows that at times, but I just don't think he'd be particularly inclined to prepare for a debate. I don't think he'd be particularly someone interested in trying to get across his point. He's kind of just this grumpy dude who's like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't think he cares. He cares that much about being right or anything like that at this point in his life. And I think Vin's relentless when she's got her mind set to something. Yes. And she has the ability to pierce copper clouds, right? Yes, she's got,
and she's a clever problem solver as well. So she could come up with
charismatic,
very charismatic, and she could come up with some sort of creative argument.
Later in the series anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Not at first, but she does develop into kind of. By the end of it, she's got these like leadership and charisma abilities.
She develops some regal qualities about her by the end. So
she's got that side to her where she was Valette.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. There's Clubs, who's a no BS kind of guy. He's tells it like he is. He's hard to deter from his, beliefs and things like that, which we admire. And you got to be able to stick to your guns in a debate. And Clubs, I have no doubt, would be able to do that. I just don't think he's going to win over the people like Vin can.
Yeah, Vin rallies people behind her even when she can be rough around the edges,
and even when she's not using her riding abilities.
Yeah. Right. That's true. But if she wanted to, then she would be able to do that too. So I mean, it does depend how I guess the debate is decided by judges. So if she needed that little extra push, and I think she could do that. So all in all, it is interesting to think Vin probably would be down to if she really needed the win too.
Yeah.
I think Vin's a little willing to.
Oh yeah, I mean it depends what's
to
at stake.
push the envelope.
She's gone all in
those kind of
multiple
things.
times.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt her ability to just be like, I'm in it.
Yeah, if I need to, I think she would be willing to cheat to win if it was for the greater good. So all that said, I think Vin has to win this one.
Yeah, another landslide. Let's see if we could get a contest that's a bit closer of a matchup here. What do we got? What's the contest?
Beep boop beep. We've got a drinking contest here, Charles.
Drinking contest. Now, we've debated before with drinking contests with some Mistborn characters in past episodes.
We have.
So let's go ahead and generate some characters here. All right, this one we could actually pull in some canon here because this character is known for influencing people to bring him drinks, and this can be none other than the guy who enjoys the finer things in life, including alcohol, and that is Breeze. However,
he's going to be a tough person to beat.
He's a tough person to beat, but if anyone's going to do it, it is going to be this almost godlike figure in the eyes of the common people of Mistborn, and that is a Mistborn himself, Kelsier. This would be some fun canon, like a scene where they just decide to have a drinking contest, where it's like the one thing Breeze might beat Kelsier at, it's like kind of that. I can picture the whole team placing bets, like rallying around them, like cheering, and I think it would be fun.
Here's the tough thing, though, Charles. If Kelsier burns pewter, then he has just inhuman ability to drink and not get... Yeah,
and Breeze would accuse him of that. Breeze would be like, "You're burning pewter, you cheat."
So shall we assume Kelsier isn't burning pewter for the sake of, and say he would win if he chose to do that?
I think if we were going to get into the mind of Sanderson and he's writing this scene, okay, Kelsier and Breeze have a drinking contest.
Yeah.
I would think that he would want it to be close and he would remove pewter from the equation, or maybe Breeze tampered with the pewter or something so it wouldn't work, or
that's possible.
Something like that.
Here's how I think it would play out, Charles. I'm imagining that Breeze is manipulating people into bringing him all the wine, all this kind of stuff, and there's this fun scene, and he's just downing drinks, and they agreed beforehand that Kelsier would not burn pewter, and you kind of see Kelsier, he must not be, because he's getting pretty drunk, and he's starting to lose it, and then something just changes in Kelsier all of a sudden, and it's like, he just gets this extra boost, and it's clear that Kelsier, when he was about to lose, and push came to shove, was not willing to go down without cheating, and he ends up burning pewter, and he ends up winning in the end. But I think it would be kind of close and Breeze is winning, so we kind of get this sense that without pewter, Breeze would win.
Yeah.
But Kelsier's down to he's a thieving crew leader.
Yes.
He's totally down to cheat.
I think you can't deny the pewter burning abilities would help Kelsier win this one, but I want Breeze to win. Yeah. I really do. And
it'd be a fun scene.
It would be a fun scene, and I believe that, someone like Sanderson or all those fanfic writers out there would come up with a humorous, fun, clever way for Breeze to squeak out the victory, and whether that's interfering with the pewter or entering a gentlemanly bet for no pewter. It's like, oh, come on. Or Breeze could be trying to, flare up Kelsier's emotions and be like, or no, Breeze doesn't flare emotions. He soothes them. So he could be like, Kelsier, how badly do you want to win that you would burn pewter against me? I'm so defenseless. There's no way that, this would be a fair matchup. We just waste all of our time and get him locked into a gentlemanly agreement beforehand. We could write something like that. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But in terms of pure strength, which is how we usually determine these matchups. we would give it to Kelsier.
You know, you could do something where Kelsier is given chromium beforehand, which wipes you of all of your reserves of the metals. So something
Breeze could
where,
put chromium in his pewter vial or something.
That's interesting.
But I think once you've ingested it,
he could slip it into his drink.
That's true, but you can't force them to burn it though, right? Like once they ingest it, can't they? Like
no, you only can if you can actually like that happens to Vin at one point as they're like burn it, and she's kind of helpless to do anything, and she does burn it. I think.
They have to get forced to burn it, but like you can tell the difference between your metals after you ingest them.
Yeah.
So just by switching the vials,
he'd have to do it intentionally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would.
So maybe it's like Kelsier, who's extremely confident, is like, I don't even need pewter to beat you, Breeze.
Yeah.
And then he's like, and to prove it, I will burn chromium beforehand. Yeah. And he actually does. And then he realizes he's out of his wits, and Breeze is actually Breeze actually ends up winning.
Yeah.
So I think you could play it that way.
Yeah, that would be fun. So without enhancements, without performance enhancing pewter, Breeze would win for certain. Otherwise, you have to put a little asterisk next to Kelsier's name because he used pewter for the victory, which kind of sullies the contest. So yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, I like that.
We were so lucky to get if I had to pick one contest for Breeze, it was like you have to pick drinking contest. That's the only thing you like.
He'd be good at a lot of things.
He'd be good at a lot of
Debate
things.
would be good. Yeah. Election.
Mm-hmm.
Just anything like the charisma stuff he'd be good at too.
Yeah.
I mean, an election between those two would be interesting.
Oh,
I mean,
you gotta give it to Kelsier. There's a whole religion around Kelsier.
Okay, yeah, well, that, while he's still alive, that's a whole... But you'd still probably give it to Kelsier because of just his levels of charisma. But Breeze, I think, would be a good... He'd be able to hang in there. Yeah. He'd be a good competitor.
For sure.
So, shall we get it pumping and get another matchup going? All right. Beep, boop, beep. We've got a rap battle here, Charles.
Oh, a rap battle. Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we've got two characters here. One we've already seen in the lineup today, but, just had to keep her in the mix. You can't just have one contest for our main character, Vin.
You brought her back, huh?
Well, yeah, I'm not removing duplicates for this one because we have 19 characters, and so I'm giving preference to new characters, but if an old one comes back in and it happens to be Vin, well, I'm just willing to let Vin back into the competition because it's Mistborn. We can't just be done with Vin after.
You manipulating this generator?
No, I'm just not.
The sanctity of the generator
I'm just not doing the remove duplicates like we normally do.
Gotcha.
And then in the other corner, this is a character who is known for their distinct way of talking, but the question is, will that put them ahead in a rap battle? We are talking of course, none other than Spook.
So, Charles, did we see Modest Yahoo together when we were in New York?
Yes, I believe we did when they opened for the Dirty Heads?
Like the Dirty Heads?
Yes, we did. Yeah, so we did see Modest Yahoo.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought we did. And he is someone who he kind of starts going into, I don't know the details behind where he's drawing from, but he goes into these kind of points where he's rapping. He's not really saying anything, but it sounds awesome. And he's really just got an awesome voice. He's got awesome rhythm, and it's just like a jam.
Yeah.
And I feel like Spook has a chance where his dialect and things like that, he could kind of start using in that way, in the way that Modest Yahoo uses.
They also give me similar vibes. Like Modest Yahoo is super confident and like super cool when he's up on stage, but he's not like a model or anything like a lot of pop music singers. So just kind of like Spook, where he if he's in his own vibe, his confidence and his ability just brings him up into that performer level. So he could be like, wasn't the wasn't of was, but boop, but you. And you'd be like, oh, okay, like this has got some flow to it.
Yes, it has to be like book 3 Spook. But I think if it is book 3 and he's doing that jam kind of like what you just illustrated there, Charles, which was, I always love when you work your musical talents into this.
Thanks.
So I don't know. I'm leaning towards Spook because I'm just trying to think what would make. What do we have to draw from to make Vin a?
I think the only thing we
rapper?
have to draw from would work against her, which is she has a hard time expressing herself, and she has a hard time tapping into that open connection to herself that a lot of artists have. You know, Vin is very much closed off to relationships, especially at the beginning, and closed off to herself, and more interested in fighting and learning how to be powerful than she is about like expressing her sensitive side. And that pretty much carries with her this whole time. And I have a feeling that those character aspects of Vin would actually work against her when it comes to being in front of a crowd of people and trying to express herself through song. You know, that I think she would be a fish out of water up on that rap battle stage.
I agree with you there. I think that...
I mean, Spook's not one for self-expression either, but he gets better at it. It's actually his arc, exactly, where he gets better at it, and he gets confidence, and he steps out of the shadows of people like Kelsier and Vin and Ellen Venture and finds his own way. That's his whole thing. So he'd be able to come up with some really interesting verse about like coming up from the bottom in the shadow of Mistborn, but I'm here and I'm burning tin better than anybody. You know, like you'd be like, oh yeah, this guy's kind of cool. Started in the streets and here I am. Like.
Does his ability to increase his hearing perhaps give him an even better ear for
That's
music
true.
as well?
He would be more sensitive to pitch and meter and flow. Yeah. That's absolutely true. And Vin can burn tin as well, but Spook is... but what do they call it when you're
a specialist?
An affluent in one...
A misting.
Yeah, yes.
A savant is the word you were looking for,
I think so, yeah. He's a savant. And he's covering his eyes, and he's like Daredevil. He's just so tuned into what he can hear that he would be dropping some real interesting
He's got
harmonies.
That blindfold on.
Yes. Well, he
does wear that blindfold in the in the third book.
I think this is one contest Vin can't win, and this is not one that a clever solution can solve either. It's like, how can you cleverly just become better at expressing yourself? You know, there's no problem to solve there that Vin normally would be in her element to get.
Right. I agree. Some of the best artists, you know, people like Taylor Swift are able to just draw from their... I won't go too far. But, I mean, that is part of what makes her an incredible artist, is she just draws from her experiences and she's able to be vulnerable with millions and millions and millions of people. And that Vin, you know, she's able to open up and be vulnerable with Ellen and a few other people, but getting in front of a crowd and being vulnerable, probably not her skill set even by the end. So,
and I think Spook's journey speaks really well to a rap song as well. You know, he's true. He's a fighter for sure, and it's just, I mean, Vin is a fighter as well, but she's almost like epic proportions. There's a grand tale where a Spook is out there, you know, hustling, and I think that would be a great inspiration for a rap song.
Vin's story would be more of a ballad.
Be like, I was born with super perfect abilities, and I'm also really good on top of that, so now I'm the best person in all the land. That's my story. She came from humble beginnings. She did. But she had
don't give her a little.
But she had a lot more to work. She had a lot more opportunity than Spook did. Even though she started from the bottom, she was still, you know, trained by Kelsier, being born a full Mistborn. You know, had all, you know, being in a relationship with Ellen Venture. Like, these are all things that are opportunities that Spook just never had. He's like, everything I got, I fought for. You know.
Honestly, too. So Spook had a crush on Vin in book 1 too. I wonder if like he can draw from some of that.
Yeah. To kind of like in this really 8 Mile style environment where they're rapping, and he's just like all of a sudden he starts flowing, and he's just letting it all out on Vin of like airing out all of his emotions, and by the end of it, he'll be like, "Okay, I'm actually over Vin now because I just, stomped her in this rap battle."
Yeah,
that's a fun
I think
matchup.
that's what happens. Yeah, let us know. Tweet us at the FDF Podcast 1 if you have different feelings about how this rap battle will play out. But we are imagining Spook as the winner over Vin, which there's probably not a lot of competitions that would have been the case. But
that's true.
That's the fun of the generator.
That's true. The generator giveth as well as it taketh away. So, what is our next contest?
Well, this time, beep boop beep, it giveth a cook-off.
Cook-off! Oh! So we've got some really exciting matchups here. Again, another character is returning. This one is our, everyone's favorite strategist, and that's Doxin. But new to the fray, this is a character who is not one that comes immediately to mind when you think of Mistborn, because they're not part of Team Vin, and they're not any of the antagonists. It extends a little further. I mean, maybe they're technically Team Vin, but they're on the fringe. And that is Human the Koloss.
Human
the Koloss. Yeah. So this is an interesting this is an interesting matchup. Don't Koloss, isn't there something about what they eat that's bizarre? Do they eat each other or something? I don't want to speak out of turn, but I kind of...
I'm trying... Yeah, it has been a year since we last read Mistborn. There's something with, where Vin is starting to be like, what is with the Koloss? And I do think she starts being like, what do they eat?
Right.
And, that's one of the questions. I'm trying to think what Koloss eat. Do they eat, grass?
Right. I don't remember. I don't
know why that's what comes to mind. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find anything about Koloss. Koloss eat?
Yeah, we need to consult the copper mine here if we're gonna do a fair analysis of who would win this cook-off. And we take these very seriously. We need to do some research here, but we don't. I'm trying to remember. I feel like there was something around food, but I might just be making that up.
I don't know. Yeah, I think. I don't know if they do eat, and if they do eat, it's probably just like grass or things like that is kind of what's coming to my head. But yeah, obviously they used to be human, and then I don't think they eat each other.
Yeah, they might. I don't know why I thought that. But that was a weird thought. But
save that for your fan fiction of this.
Yeah, we need some more lore in here.
I don't know. Well, let's again tweet at us if you know what Koloss eat. We're happy to rethink the whole situation. But right now, let's assume Koloss not exactly cooking up some delicacies here. So let's be honest.
I mean, Doxin's going to do all of his mise en place. He's going to get all of ingredients portioned out, chopped up, all ready to go on the table. He'll have watched a few YouTube videos, gotten the technique down, so that when it comes time to compete, he is in it. And
the ingredients are exactly down with the recipe.
He sourced he did all his grocery shopping. He's not missing a single ingredient. He just can't be beat in that respect.
The measurements will be perfect.
Yeah, Koloss, if they do eat, I'm sure he would just take some meat and shove it in a fire and then take it out, or even just eat it raw,
Yeah.
So there you go.
I agree.
And
it's not even close.
It's Doxin. That was an interesting matchup. Human the Koloss making an... I mean, where else is he gonna... Who else is talking about Human the Koloss? That is an interesting person to bring to the mix.
Yeah, or an interesting Koloss to bring to the mix.
For
anyway.
Sure, yeah, he is an interesting Koloss.
As Koloss go, he was a very interesting... he has... Charles, you found this when we were doing our Mistborn episode. Human has this whole intense backstory where he was a hero when he was actually a person. And do you remember this? Sanderson wrote about this and...
Oh, he wrote all those... in the notes.
You remember this? He has a whole story. Yeah.
Vaguely, I do remember that Sanderson wrote chapter by chapter his annotations of where he was at in everything, and for human. Yeah, he did have a whole. He was the leader. Okay, well, he was the leader of a Kolos group, but he also had some backstory. He was a ska rebel, and he led some dudes in the fight against the Lord Ruler. So
yeah.
And so
that's why he was such a, because part of the thing with human was he was more self-aware than most of the
right. He was actually able to have like a conversation with Vin and asking questions and
and still had this memory of being human that was making him be like, I'm human.
Exactly.
Which is such a classic. I'm just thinking about it now because Sanderson totally, I feel like a bozo for not figuring it out beforehand, but that's how Sanderson does it. Is like he's like a magician that right in front of your face will be like, the character is saying I'm human. Why is it like, and then it's like, oh, of course, when he has the big reveal that Kolos have been human the whole time. But in my first read, it completely got me. So good on Sanderson, good on human in his own way, and also good on Doxson for winning this
very well said.
And shall we get the generator
Let's
going?
Do it.
All right. Beep, boop, beep. We have a podcast duo, Charles, which means picking two groups of two and trying to speculate who would have the better podcast between the two.
All right. So I guess I'm just going to go in order as they were drawn here. So the first two characters that we have here, I'm kind of interested in this one. I have a feeling that they might do podcasting about like etiquette or perhaps just charm or just maybe like gossip about rulers past. And you can't do that without a character who is very familiar with leaders and leadership. And this, of course, is Tindwyl.
Good for Tindwyl.
Good for Tindwyl. We're happy to see her. This is, of course, the character that trained El Adventure to act more like a king. And so big fan of Tindwyl. And then we have returning a previous champion in the Who Would Win Mistborn edition. We have Breeze.
Ooh.
So Breeze and Tindwyl.
Oh, Breeze would be a good podcaster. He would be
fantastic. Although you can't necessarily... you can't soothe people through the airwaves that we know of.
How do we know? Is that canon?
I think there's a distance
Has Sanderson
thing.
written about that in his annotations?
I think there is a distance thing, but I don't know for sure. And
I think
so
that's
that
fair,
is the first duo. The second duo, I mean, this is a character that we have not talked about yet. Both of them are new to this episode. But this one, I mean, this is one of the big ones, guys. This is a character that, since we can talk about spoilers, has gone on to basically be like God, essentially, and that is Sazed. Sazed. Going up against Tindwyl for ratings. That's pretty interesting. Ooh. And then we have Sazed.
I think they'd collab.
Yeah, they would definitely do a collab, and that would be very interesting. Yeah. Although they might get too into the details for most people's taste, but it could be fun. And then, of course, Sazed can't do it alone, right? We need a podcast host for Sazed, and this is a character who has proven to be thoughtful, has proven to be open-minded, and involved in one of the best twists of this Mistborn original trilogy. This is, of course, Tensoon. Sazed and Tensoon against Tindwyl and Breeze. Who would be the better podcast duo? Dylan, what is your insight here?
Oh, geez. I mean, these are both solid duos. I would be interested in listening to either of these podcasts because I feel like Tensoon and Sazed, I'm assuming it's Sazed before his, what is the word, like deification or something like that, before he becomes a god. And I think that, I don't know, I think that him and Tensoon have so many, Tensoon has so many years of life to draw from, and Sazed has so much wisdom about the past to draw from, and they also have this kind of discovery that the that basically I guess Tensoon was not himself a former ferrochemist or anything like that, but the first generation was, if I'm remembering the lore correctly. But I mean, I think they'd have a lot of interesting things to talk about their shared history in that way. And
I mean, think about all the different topics Sazed could speak on. He has a lot of the copper mine at his disposal. He could talk about all these different religions, all of these different ideas. And Tensoon seems to be, to me, like a curious mind and a thoughtful mind, and would bring some interesting perspective to that. I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. So I don't know, that it's easier for me to see what those two would talk about than it is for me to see, even though Tyndall and Breeze are both individually people I'd be very interested to hear from. I'm like, what is the conversation here between
I do
the
think
two
their
of them?
personalities almost complement each other, though. It would just be humorous to see them interact, because Tyndall is very matter of fact, a bit buttoned up as well, very, very formal. And Breeze is like, relax, come out of your shell a little bit, let's have fun. So to see the two bounce off of each other, there's a lot of potential there. But it's like you said, what would they talk about? And I'm not sure. To be honest with you, they could, Tyndall knows a lot of history and knows a lot about old rulers, and Breeze knows how to be like a dandy, essentially, like know how, like the best clothes and the best food and wine and all that. But is there an overlap?
Yeah, I'm just having trouble seeing it if there is. And I think, the two of them would have some interesting banter. But I'm just like, what is the focus of the podcast? Like, and I think that podcasts, when they have kind of a thing, a thing
they could do like I'm not sure, like a crime series about the Lord Ruler. I don't know.
They could. I guess I'd just be more interested in Tensoon as a person who came from a Khandra, I guess, not person. Tensoon as a Khandra, and the Khandra came from the Terrace people. And I think Tensoon would be very curious about the history of the Terrace people and learning more about his own history through that. And Sazed would have so much wisdom to offer on that. I just love this idea of that kind of like, what if the pitch of it is kind of like, a Khandra has just learned that his people used to be Terrace people. So he sits down with the Terrace person who most knows about that history and tries to learn from
I mean, history podcasts are very popular, just like going through history and teaching people in like these serial kind of shows. I think just because they have some common ground and they have an apparent topic that they would be able to discuss, and I think they would capture a market of people who are interested in history, and history is something that was lost to the people in this world of Mistborn. So I think they would be starved for this kind of content. I think there's a huge market here.
A lot of Khandra. A lot of Kolos listeners. No, I don't think Kolos would be into podcasts, but a lot of Khandra listeners, I think, who would want to learn about things. It depends, obviously, if the Khandra are still around and kicking, but I assume they are at this point. Because we still have Tensoon around.
I mean, most of them.
And I think a lot of them would be interested in.
But those that are left.
Yeah, well, we're I guess we're kind of in a hypothetical world where all these folks are still alive and not gods.
The timeline of it could
I just
be
imagine,
they're all still around and Sazed's not a god. That's true. Yep.
Yeah, so I think that they'd have a lot of Khandra interested in hearing.
Man, that would cause some controversy.
And Terrace people
Khandra,
as well,
like the top tier, the oldest Khandra are the first generation are trying to keep that a secret, so this would be scandalous.
Oh,
But
yeah. Well, that would bring them a lot of social media attention
think
for
of all
sure,
those
Charles.
followers.
So
We
I
gotta
think
give it to
all
Sazed
that's
and
to say,
Tansoon.
oh, yeah, I think it's clear at this point. That's a good
That's
duo.
a great duo. And
Yeah.
I think we've set out to accomplish what we've wanted. Dylan, how do you feel about stopping it here, doing another one? Where are you at?
I mean, we're right about that 45-minute
Yep.
mark, right? So I think that's pretty solid for these Who Would Win. We can always do more Who Would Win
That's
Mistborn
true.
episodes down the line. So
some characters got the day off
think,
today. I mean, we didn't see Ellen Venture at all. Straff Venture, Zane, like so many characters that people want to put in the mix here. But you know what? We'll just have to potentially wait till next time.
Yeah, I mean, we do 3 episodes a week over here at Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast, so we're happy to revisit. Whenever we talk about Mistborn, we always have a blast, and I think Mistborn lends itself so well to these Who Would Win episodes that it just makes too much sense.
Just
that
makes too much
we'll keep
sense.
doing them.
Very well said.
Yeah, so I think I feel good about getting that sweet, sweet outro music pumping right about now, Charles. If you're feeling
I am
good.
feeling good. Let's get it pumping.
Cool.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. If you like what you heard today, if you had your own insight into some of these matchups today, let us know over on Twitter at the FTF Podcast with a number 1 at the end. You can also engage with us over there on Instagram at the FTF Podcast. Check us out there, guys. We would greatly appreciate the support over there. Now, Dylan, if they are fans of the show, they've engaged on social media, and they want to further support the show, and they just so happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, what can they do?
Toss 5 stars to our podcast. Just find that Friends Talking Fantasy page on the Apple Podcast app. You'll want to click the Friends Talking Fantasy page, scroll down past all those episodes until you start seeing stars. Once you're seeing stars, the optimal number to click to support the show would be 5 of them. If you have a little bit of extra time and you want to write a review, then that can be even more helpful for a podcast like ours. But all that said, just listening is more than enough. We're so grateful that you do that.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, go forth and conquer, friends.